And now we're starting the panel devoted to the National Cybersecurity System. Our panelists will be debating whether an evolution is needed of the National Cybersecurity System, or perhaps the time has come to revolutionize the system. The Act on the National Cybersecurity System, just to give you a very brief introduction, it implements an EU directive into the Polish legal order, and that built the foundation for the Polish cybersecurity system that came as a breakthrough when it comes to cybersecurity in Poland. And this issue will be debated by our guest, Mr. Marek Zagórski, the Minister of Digital Affairs, Poland, Tomasz Zdzikot, President of the Management Board of Poczta Polska, the Polish Post, Tadeusz Chomicki, the Ambassador for Cyber and Tech Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Poland, Łukasz Jędrzejczak, the Deputy Director at the National Cybersecurity Center and the head of the CSIRT at the Ministry of Defense, and our Romanian guest, Alexandru Nazar, Counselor for the Ministry of Transport, Special Envoy on Cybersecurity at the Ministry of Transport, Romania. And my first question goes to a minister. Sir, so we've seen 2 years of the operation of the National Cybersecurity System. Could you tell us what has changed so far? How has this piece of legislation changed the system, or in general? It's a great time to present our lessons learned and success stories. Good afternoon. So as you said at the very beginning, the Act on the National Cybersecurity System gave us the opportunity and the platform for developing a comprehensive cybersecurity system in Poland. All these actions that were taken in, let's say, less organized manner, they were given some institutional framework. As you know very well, we set up a collegium, a council for cybersecurity, which is responsible for coordinating all cybersecurity-related matters. We set up 3 national units, and we also created a system for developing national CSIRTs. So we've created a system for collecting, reporting on incident notification, incident response, also at the military level by the army and by other services. And I appreciate very much the fact that we have that piece of legislation, because that led to a compromise, not in terms of a division of roles, but more of a consensus when it comes to our understanding and the concept of the system. And indeed, 2 years into the operation of the system, of the solutions, I think it's the right time to reflect on what has happened so far and how the geopolitical conditions and political conditions have changed, and to reflect on the transformations in the environment. Similarly, the COVID pandemic has showed that we're facing new challenges. And actually, it was specifically yesterday when we presented our proposed amendments to the Act on the National Cybersecurity System, largely in order to improve the system. We understand that some sectoral initiatives have been in place, but not to the extent that we expected. We would like to turn it into some mandatory actions, and the act didn't sanction operations of such cybersecurity measures at the operators of key services, and in principle, such security centers should be in place with every single service provider. But it is important to have that covered, to have that governed. And then and also the incident centers, centers for exchanging information on incidents, they are necessary. On top of that, we would like to incorporate into that the sector which we believe is the key for the overall operation of the sector, which is the telecom sector. On the one hand, we would like to have a special ICT, telecom sector, and the sector for the telecom services provider. At the same time, we do not change the key principle, which is collaboration. I believe it works very well between the Agency for Internal Security and the Ministry and other partners in order to coordinate that incident response system. What is missing? But we're working on it, and what we believe should be in place, and I'm going to mention, talk more about that, is building the capacity to respond to incidents, but also it's about taking proactive steps. So we have more tools to respond or to act before any threats arise in the cyberspace. So if these amendments are adopted by the Polish Parliament, it is our intention to continue developing the model that, in our opinion, has worked quite well in the past 2 years. Although we see some areas that call for more precise regulations and provisions, and some investment in this area is needed. And in the operational program Digital Poland, a special axis should be launched dedicated to cybersecurity. We haven't had that so far. We would like to have the necessary funding set aside in order to launch the process. And speaking about our success stories, and lessons learned, we can clearly see that we need to emphasize even more increase of competence in that area, in particular when it comes to the governmental administration. Well, actually, these steps have been already taken, so we need to have that overall comprehensive view on the cybersecurity system. So competences are the key. Well, actually, sir, you worked on that legislation on the Act on the National Cybersecurity from the level of the ministry, and now you're looking at it from the point of view of the Polish Post. So could you tell us, Mr. Zdzikot, about the role played by the Polish Post in the system? So I could divide it into the time before enacting the Act on the cybersecurity and system, and after that. So before that, I was responsible for building the structures of the police, working on building up the capacities, and at the Ministry of Defense worked in the similar area. And after that law was introduced, I've been working on the commercial or economic side. of the implementation. Well, I think it was a personal success of Minister Zagórski. He's being very modest in describing his role, but he was a major contributor to creating that win-win situation for all parties involved. Well, the Act on the National Cybersecurity System created the owner of the national cybersecurity. So as mentioned here, that act introduced the backbone of the national cybersecurity system based on the Ministry of Defense, on the Agency of Internal Security, and we have coordination board. Then we have the key person responsible for that, which is the Minister of Digitalization. So that's the backbone. Now we need to think about developing the system. What is the key thing here is that cybersecurity will not come from the outside. We need to develop it internally within organizations, and it cannot be imposed by 2 or 3 predefined national or state structures. Every single company, in particular companies like the Polish Post, which is the operator of the key infrastructure, must take care of it, and we must bear in mind that phishing attacks and other attacks, they're technology based. They are not based on any advanced IT or technological actions. So that's the key concept for now and for the future. We're getting prepared to take over the role of the national digital operator. We have a draft bill on electronic serving and delivery of electronic post act that will be soon enacted. So very soon we'll be registering and providing a service which is registered electronic delivery. It must be a service provided on time, safe and secure, and comply fully with the requirement of integrity and confidentiality. And we all working towards that goal, and even now, we provide all the digital services, like the services that were launched during the pandemic in a very short period of 2 weeks. So that was a reverse hybrid delivery concept. So, and this is why we appreciate security. And finally, when comparing the public sector and the commercial sector, I must admit that we share one issue, one difficulty, which is attracting professional personnel, technical personnel. So we have all these key players who want to attract the best educated and the most advanced professionals. We know very well that nowadays the deficit for cybersecurity experts is 10,000 people or more at globally that may even reach 3 to 5 million people. This is the pool of experts which is missing and will be necessary in order to build safe and robust cybersecurity system. We're talking about sectoral actions, and we're talking about the planned institutionalization of the cybersecurity units and points for key services. So that means that hiring, attracting, and educating key personnel, key technical personnel and experts, that process should be taken over by the government. So the Ministry of Defense is working on such competencies by using the potential of military schools and even by setting up special courses at the secondary educational level, because it takes a bit of time to educate an expert.
Thank you very much for this contribution. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not a direct addressee here in terms of this regulation, but cybersecurity is becoming more and more important. What's the importance of cybersecurity when you consider relations in between countries, and also when you consider the context of the EU and the UN? Well, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is, in a way, a recipient of the contents of regulations, and the Ministry negotiates the contents related to cybersecurity and expresses this contents in contacts with our partners abroad. As you have noticed, the issue of cybersecurity nowadays is becoming one of the most important areas in terms of international relations, not just in the context of security, but in general, in all complex relations. And every country has its own national interests that it needs to promote. Obviously, there is a political and economic and military dimension related to it. Additionally, states act in the context of their regions, and they do that in bilateral relations, and also they are present in international organizations. Sometimes their interests converge, sometimes they diverge. Sometimes they have opposing interests on different arenas. That's why maintaining a coherent policy in terms of cybersecurity, especially abroad, is especially in relations abroad, is a difficult issue. Sometimes we may have common interests, sometimes we are neutral in terms of our interests, and this is when collaboration is possible. But sometimes we have opposite interests in the case of some countries, and we need to define these interests in order to define the level of collaboration that is possible in between different countries. On the international arena, these relations are maintained on the regional level, and we are supported by other ministries promoting different solutions, we as Poland. And we have collaboration in our 3Cs initiative, our Trimare initiative, but here we've just started work on the issue. In international organizations, when you consider the context of international organizations, there are different kinds of organizations. There are technical international organizations. For example, there is the International Association of Telecommunications, but any technical issues now are becoming political issues, and technical solutions have a political dimension. For example, there are proposals concerning the creation of a new IP address system, and in this way, the internet might be divided into two kinds: one that is global and open and universal, and another one that is not. And we might have two kinds of the internet, and different rules might apply to these two kinds, and this will have consequences for international collaboration in the field of the economy and other fields. So it has a political dimension, although it's just a technical issue. There are organizations that might be considered soft in terms of their obligations, and these organizations are, for example, the Organization of Security and Collaboration in Europe or the UN, and there's collaboration within these organizations as regards cybersecurity. Confidence is being developed in we have confidence-building measures, and countries are encouraged to collaborate, to exchange good practices, and to forge direct contacts within the platform of the Organization of Security and Collaboration in Europe. In the UN, the situation is a bit more complex. The issues of telecommunications, security, cybersecurity, involve several processes. There is a group of governmental experts, and there is an open working team dealing with collaboration in the field of telecommunications and cyberspace. So OGE and OEGE. Within these groups, we can see some competition. These groups are closed, and they try to develop solutions that are later on adopted in resolutions and considered standards for all members of the UN. But some countries have been unhappy with the way this work has been conducted. So now we have an open group dealing with similar issues. And as part of these activities, we try to, well, balance the aims of both groups. I'm not going to discuss the details, but as part of this international collaboration, Poland recently has been trying to promote some important elements. We've been talking about it in our proposals. First of all, we try to base what we do on the standards that have already been universally accepted and approved. There are countries that try to come up with new proposals, new solutions, but we stick to what has already been arranged, what has already been approved as part of the UN system. And also in Europe, we try to stick to something that is called the Budapest Convention. It includes standards that have been adopted by the Western world, and now they are becoming adopted by more and more countries from outside the Western world. What Poland says here is the following. We already have some arranged standards. What we can do is to show how these standards are implemented in different countries and different cybersecurity systems in these countries. We need to show our best practices as well. And we should share our best practices with the countries that do not have such achievements in this field. And as part of sharing our best practices, we help these countries develop their own capacities that aim to combine cybersecurity, which is in the interest of us all, because cybersecurity should concern all of us. The Internet should be secure for all of us. Our activity in the Internet should be secure everywhere. And one final thing is the dimension of cybersecurity in the organizations that are closed, and obligations adopted as part of such activity are the ones that are binding only for the member states. For us, it's the EU. And the issue of cybersecurity has become more and more important in these organizations. They are more important now than they used to be. In NATO, we also try to make this approach of all the member states universal so that we can develop one common standards in terms of cybersecurity. But here among the speakers on this panel, I believe we all know about it. But let me tell you what's happening in the EU as we focus here not just on defense, but also on other issues. The EU sometimes might be slow in its actions, but still it does take actions. Cybersecurity appeared as a subject, as an important subject in the EU at the beginning of this century. In 2015, we could see an acceleration of works. In 2015, the decision was adopted on launching the cyber diplomacy process. A number of solutions, a number of policies were developed. There are EU documents and EU regulations concerning this field. In 2019, the legal framework for the introduction of sanctions by the EU sanctions within the space of cybersecurity were adopted. And this year, these sanctions were actually introduced against 6 people for attacks. These were the sanctions for attacks attacks of the EU, and they were not sanctions against the attacks. They were not sanctions for the attacks against the EU, but these sanctions might also involve attacks against third countries and also international organizations if the EU sees collaboration with such countries and such organizations important, and any attacks become a threat for the security of the EU as well. For example, there were sanctions against for the attacks against attacks related to chemical weapons, and also Polish entities were subjects of such attacks, so there is this Polish thread there. And in general, I think that it's really important that such sanctions were adopted by the EU, because in this way the EU could show that such wrongful acts within cyberspace that can affect the EU and its member states cannot go unpunished, which did happen before. Sanctions show that the EU is able to take up activities that hopefully will lead to fewer attacks in the future and to respond to such attacks in the future. These sanctions are related to the ban of travel within the EU, and these sanctions might apply not just to people who undertook these attacks, but also those who gave shelter to such persons, who supported such persons. Very often it's very difficult to define who these attackers were, to precisely specify who these people were, because they often act from the territories of other countries, and this matter is complicated. That's why the process of introducing sanctions was a long-term process, because finding those who were to blame required the introduction of very complex procedures. Thanks to the technological progress nowadays, we can define very precisely the source of such attacks. What is left is an electronic fingerprint. And it's much easier now to indicate the source of some activities, the source of some attacks. And I'd like to say that Poland has been very active in this field, thanks to the support of our experts from competent ministries. And we can be very active in within the EU. We can be very active as regards the introduction of sanctions. I think that soon more sanctions will be adopted. They are just being prepared. And also, we would like to improve the level of uniformity in between standards within the EU. In January this year, a set of tools, a set of 5G security tools has been announced. And Poland is an active state here. Poland tries to promote the adoption of common standards and common solutions within the EU, because cybersecurity for us is can only be achieved when the entire EU is cyber secure. And one final thing I'd like to say briefly is as follows. We think we need to increase collaboration in between the EU and NATO as regards cybersecurity. Cyber attacks are often very similar. If they are cyber attacks against entities related to NATO or against EU entities, the actors responsible for them are the same very often. And in NATO and the EU, these are often the same people, the same resources, the same ways of action. And we would like to promote greater collaboration in order to increase the resistance of EU member states and NATO member states to such attacks. Thank you very much. Director, you are a head of Sectorial Search. What were the main challenges as regards the activity of your unit, and what is the collaboration in between civil units and your organization? Maybe let me answer the second part of the question first.
Let me first refer to the first part of the question. Well, I appreciate collaboration between CSIRTs. It is an actual collaboration. It's exchanging information about incidents. So between or among people who are first notified about incidents, and then we are at the level of developing security policies where we jointly work on improving cybersecurity at the national level. Well, the biggest issue that you're asking about, well, I think that Mr. Zdzikot has already mentioned that acute lack of cybersecurity experts. At the Ministry of National Defense for a year and a half now, we've been trying to respond to that challenge by increasing limit at the military academies. We have dedicated courses, and we try to attract experts in this field. And last week, on Monday, we admitted 48 new employees at the National Cybersecurity Center, 20 Polish Army officers, and 28 civilians. And on Thursday, we said goodbye to 28 officers of the Polish Army. So this is a circle. So it would be a great thing if well-trained experts from the military could join the civilian pool of experts and use their cybersecurity expertise. We are all very well aware that the cybersecurity people are the key. Systems are serviced by people, operated by people, and they must be managed by properly trained people. Thank you. And my last question goes to our Romanian guest. My question is about implementation of the directive in Romania.
For NIS Directive in Romania, how it looks like, and if you can share some good experience and best practices with us.
Thank you very much. And first of all, allow me to thank you for the invitation here and to congratulate you for organizing this summit and these panels in the time of the pandemic. You know, the cybersecurity is a forefront matter for Romania. We think we need to strengthen and extend the cooperation, and we talk here about crisis management, cyber threat intelligence, resilience building, and enhancing readiness and exercises. We did implement NIS Directive as well. We did that through a law in 2018. We also had challenges in ensuring this implementation as well. So we had to change the law this summer. So we adopted an ordinance this summer in July in which we changed certain aspects of the law. Especially we did a much more flexible working group on assessing the cyber threats, because that didn't work in the past. As well, we worked on the redundancies because there were two kinds of types of reports, one on the NIS Directive, another one on GDPR. So there are things that we did improve in the law this summer. What we didn't do yet is that we didn't build the sectorial search in our view, they are very important, namely transport, energy. We noticed how important was the health cybersecurity in this pandemic, and these sectorial certs, in our point of view, are essential. So I would use the occasion that we have the minister here to say that we are ready to start the discussion on the memorandum of understanding between our ministry, which has digital attributions, and the similar ministry in Poland, a memorandum of understanding on the implementation of this sectorial search, which in our view, they are very important. We are extremely open to cooperate as well in digital and cybersecurity matters. Well, on the part of cooperation, I was prepared to talk a little bit about the Cybersecurity Act and the cybersecurity strategy, but the colleague here from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Polish Foreign Affairs, already did that, so I will skip it. But I would like to talk a little bit about the discussion on the regulation regarding the establishment of a cybersecurity competence center, the industrial research technological cyber center, plus the network, the network of this cyber center, which is a regulation which is debated in the last 3 years. You know, Romania was extremely active regarding this regulation. We have been the major contributor to the regulation, and we also have been the first country offering to host the cyber center, giving our specialized people in cybersecurity and our validated competencies, because you know how active was Romania in ensuring cybersecurity within NATO, on Ukraine, for instance, and in general. So there is this discussion on this regulation for 3 years, and in this debate in the cyber working group within the Telecom Council, we noticed that not everybody was convinced EU needs such a center, which is quite an important matter because, you know, there are 4 types of financing for research and development available. It's the ERDF, it's the EU Invest, it's Horizon, it's Digital Europe. So you have a lot of types and a lot of conditions for financing innovations in cybersecurity. You do not have them in one place. There is no single rule to apply. And then we wonder, why don't we have digital sovereignty? In order to reach digital sovereignty within the EU, we first of all need to work a little bit on what are the instruments to arrive there. And one instrument is to coherently finance the R&D in cybersecurity. That's why Romania thinks the establishment of this center is essential for Europe and is essential for our region, because our region is even more vulnerable for cyber attacks. And I'm talking about the whole region now. Talking a little bit more now, there is a proposal for the cybersecurity joint unit. The Commission asked us to contribute with opinions on that. We also think the cyber unit, joint unit, is extremely important. So we need to cooperate and talk and see what is the best option for it and contribute to that as well. Furthermore, I think we need to use the 3Cs initiative as a format of cooperation, and we need to use it more on the cybersecurity matters as well, because we have the same issues. All the 3Cs the 3Cs initiative states have the same issues regarding cybersecurity, and maybe act together, act in coordination when we are, you know, in front of such important moments, important, let's say, decisions, like the Cyber Security Center or this Cyber Joint Unit and so on. I think we need to pay a lot more attention in the future on the debate, and I think this attention should be also political, not only technical, because the threat is real, and the threat is affecting our critical infrastructure. And even if the awareness is not high, I'm talking about population here, we have a political responsibility to create a secure environment for us and for Europe. And in the end, I want to emphasize the let's say commitment of Romanian government on this issue. Even my nomination from the Prime Minister as a special representative on cybersecurity reflects that commitment, and our contribution for the regulation regarding the Cybersecurity Center as well. So we're open to cooperate. We want to work and discuss on this memorandum of understanding because Romania and Poland are very similar, have very similar problems, and if you have and you do have experience in creating better institutions, or if you have best practices and if we do and can share this, we need to build trust and cooperate even better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Panie ministrze, w nowelizacji
Minister, in the proposed amendment of the Act on the National Cybersecurity System that you are submitting, a lot of room has been devoted to improvements in the 5G technologies in Poland. Well, before I comment on that, I wanted to thank our Romanian guests for this invitation to collaborate. We've had some excellent, we have this excellent history of collaboration, and when speaking about IT initiatives at the European Forum, EU Forum, at the Forum of the 3Cs initiatives, we have joint initiatives, and first and foremost, we agree when it comes to the key issues of the entire sector. And when we are debating cybersecurity right now, I think it's worth emphasizing that we have this continuous excellent collaboration with Romania, and I want to thank you very much. And I very much look forward to implementing more initiatives in this area. So as I was saying, the absence of the telecom sector in the national cybersecurity system, as I said, that was the key weakness that we observed, and in accordance with the directive, that telecom industry was somehow excluded from the system and was given a special importance, a special recognition. But if this area is not included, telecom networks are not going to form an imminent part of the national cybersecurity system, and the system will be deficient. So therefore, that is related to the construction of the 5G network in Poland. That has been repeated many times. I'm not going to repeat it again, that the new technology will have a very large impact on our economy and on our security. For this reason, it is absolutely necessary to guarantee full security of the network. Telecom operators involved in building the 5G network, they should comply with the requirements imposed on other suppliers of key services. For example, let me use this as a comparison or as a case study. A pharmacy is classified as in some instances as a provider of critical services. Telecom operators are not classified as providers of critical services. So that clearly shows some deficiencies of the concept, and we're making up for it. Those of you who have been following the process of processing and amending the Act on the National Cybersecurity System are aware of its details and concepts when it comes to building telecom networks and the 5G network. So when it comes to the EU toolbox, we need to identify providers of high-risk providers. So that's been a debate about the definition of these high-risk providers, high-risk suppliers. We're going to include that in our amended Act on the National Cybersecurity, and that will be debated broadly with at the governmental level and with our partners, with telecom operators and other organizations. But that is beyond any other arguments that this network must be fully secured. So the state must have this 100% assurance of full security. So what we've experienced during the pandemic, our growing reliance on the data transmission and data processing, we can clearly see that every single weakness in this area may have grave consequences. And certainly we are fully aware of the risks involved. We might be planning slightly ahead, but this is a sine qua non condition when it comes to the cybersecurity.
So now let's go back to the main issue of the panel. There is an amendment that has been proposed by the Ministry of Digital Affairs. And is this amendment an evolution or a revolution? And what do you think? Should we just amend law? Or should we introduce serious changes into the law? In my opinion, this is evolution, which is a result of an evaluation. The law on the National Cybersecurity System has been in operation for 2 years now, and as it has already been said, this law created foundations, and it defined the area of responsibility for cybersecurity. But the backbone that has been created should now be extended to include other bones and tissue, and this is what the amendment is doing. What's really important is that we all need to be convinced that our system does not end with 4 national CSIRTs. No, that's not the point. Obviously, CSIRTs are extremely important, but you need to have sectoral certs, and we need to start with ourselves. Collaboration is key. Collaboration is crucial in the world of cybersecurity. And I do agree with what Ambassador has said. Most what is done in cybersecurity goes beyond goes beyond borders, the way we understand them in the traditional way. So we need to collaborate at the level of the country, and we need to collaborate internationally too. But you need to start with yourself. You need to start with developing the potential at your organization, at the place where it is necessary. From the perspective of the Polish Post, the company that I manage, I must say that we are a large company, the biggest in Poland. We employ 80,000 employees. We have 7,500 outlets, and the IT systems that we manage are huge. 500 different applications, 20,000 plus computers and tablets. The post offices are present in every country, and they work as a telecommunications circulation system in any country. And we have had a pandemic, and the Polish Post was in operation, is in operation, has been, and we must develop structures that are responsible for the security of our networks. and the systems that will be becoming crucial, especially in the sense of cybersecurity, in the context of cybersecurity. Secondly, awareness is extremely important, and a lot needs to be done here. We have to take care of all these issues on an everyday basis in the context of our clients. Probably all companies in Poland think in this way. All citizens in Poland think in this way, namely phishing attacks is something we have to deal with as Polish Post on an everyday basis. There are attacks that exploit our brand, that exploit our graphic mark and our logo, and we need to make sure that we are safe and secure. There are also attacks within the organization. There are attempts to extort payments, and we need to keep working on all this in terms of raising awareness. And this is not something that any law can improve. I mean, every manager needs to be working on it, obviously, thanks to the law that we have. We also have awareness now of all these issues. There are people who are responsible for them. Every entity in Poland knows where to report any incidents, where to get information. But a lot of work that is required is the work on the ground level in every organization. Thank you very much. We don't have much time left, but a lot of interesting issues have been mentioned here, not just the issues related to sanctions for cyber attacks. Can such a tool be an effective tool to scare off aggressors, to scare off attackers? Well, we will see in the future how effective a tool it is. That's the aim of cyber sanctions. Cyber sanctions focus on one specific person or one specific entity. These cyber sanctions are not able to punish this entity or this person to the extent we would like to see them punished, but these instruments show us that the EU is able to take up specific tangible actions, not just declarations. And these actions must be taken into account by those entities and people who attempt to attack us in the future. And for some, it will be made more difficult to carry out actions that are hostile towards the EU and its member states. Adopting these sanctions was one of trailblazing activities, and next sanctions, it will be easier to introduce next sanctions, to adopt next sanctions. Some decisions were slowed down because of the pandemic. Some decisions were the first one to be taken, as these were decisions taken electronically. But that's a separate story. We are not going to cover it here. Director? I'd like to ask about something you've already mentioned, namely personnel. How to encourage people to join your ranks so that your uniform is attractive for them. Well, the Ministry of National Defense is fully aware that we need to recruit people responsible for cybersecurity. This is why at our universities we have special programs focusing on cybersecurity, and this is something that is a long-term initiative. We will see results in 2 years from now. We started these efforts 2 years ago. The Ministry of Defense has earmarked funds for training people in smaller towns up to 2,000 inhabitants. This will be training provided at the secondary school level. So we provide these schools with computers, with trainers that specialize in cybersecurity. And these young people will be able to put on our green uniforms, join the army, and then provide services for public administration units or for our national entrepreneurs. And these will be services focusing on cybersecurity. One last question to our guest from Romania. Any potential collaboration in between Poland and Romania in the future?
Well, there is a very good collaboration already, but we need to strengthen that. And maybe in the framework of this memorandum of understanding, when we can emphasize that and discuss cybersecurity and digital matters. And of course, we could, in the future, and I very much encourage that, discuss our common position on cyber matters in Brussels, because we have the same kind of issues, and most of the time we are on the same page. So we could even more coordinate ourselves in adopting common positions in Brussels. Anyhow, we're open and we're here, and Romanian government is extremely committed to enhance cybersecurity Romanian action abroad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo moim.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our speakers for interesting remarks, and I'd like to thank our audience for being here with us. Concluding, in terms of our national cybersecurity system, I would say we have an evolution here, but as the ambassador has mentioned, this system does not include everything in Poland, because diplomatic activity in terms of cybersecurity is not there. Diplomatic activity is outside this national system. The speakers here were Mr. Marek Zagórski, the Minister of Digital Affairs, Mr. Tomasz Dzikot, President of the Management Board for Poczta Polska, Mr. Alexander Nazare, Counselor of the Ministry of Transport and Special Envoy on Cybersecurity, Ministry of Transport, Romania, Łukasz Jędrzejczak, Deputy Director of the National Cybersecurity Center, and Tadeusz Chomicki, Ambassador for Cyber and Technical Affairs from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much.